Final Fantasy XVI aims fairly high. It aims to be both a course correction and an evolution of the Foundation 15 and 13 both laid out, while borrowing from other franchises like Devil May Cry and even a bit of Tales of in its gameplay design. While 16 has a lot of the DNA from other games I love, I think it has a lot of ways this both helps and hinders the experience. While 16 has a lot of the DNA of other games I love, I think this both helps and hinders the experience. 16 is unique in its relationship to other Final Fantasy games, but it's when you pull out and look at the games it pulls from that a few negatives begin to crop up. Full spoilers ahead. The developers of Final Fantasy XVI have gone on record saying that their world is inspired heavily by Game of Thrones. This is apparent from the opening of the game, with several factions engaged in negotiations while a war rages in the background. While most Final Fantasy games have a mix of goofiness and seriousness, this game leans hard into the seriousness, down to even the Chocobo being portrayed as potential casualties of the war. The lone Moogle in the game is a bit of an exception, but they take such a minor role in the game that it doesn't have much bearing on the tone. Even the characters like Cid and Mid, who are more humorous, are still extremely muted in their portrayals, and the game treats their humor and brightness as an oddity rather than the norm like in other Final Fantasies. Furthermore, this game seems to enjoy putting its characters through the ringer, and the ending is definitely a somber one. The setup of this game is strikingly similar to another JRPG I adore, Tales of Berseria. Both portray a dark protagonist who's out for revenge on the one who killed their younger brother. Where I think Berseria succeeds and 16 fails is in the character writing. Each character themselves is interesting in a vacuum in Final Fantasy XVI, but most of the time their relationships aren't fleshed out or explored in a meaningful way. Clive and Joshua have the most development, and Clive's romance with Jill is, well, done enough, but otherwise the game really fails to build an emotional connection between most of these people. Berseria's characters are, in contrast, a bunch of lovable people who each develop their own unique relationship with each other, and just seeing them interact with each other is a major selling point. In fairness, the game does a good job establishing the villains and why Clive might go after them. Benedicta, the first major antagonist of the game, does a good job establishing herself as a target for him, despite them not being terribly aware of each other beforehand. Her past relationship with Cid meshes well with Clive's growing friendship with him, so when Cid loses to Benedicta, it makes sense for Clive to be the one to fight Benedicta afterwards. Final Fantasy XVI borrows a lot of its combat systems from Devil May Cry, right down to the combat director being the same between both games. They even share similar mechanics, like a dedicated projectile button, holding down a button to charge specific moves, and even jumping on an enemy to continue your combo. Where 16 is unique is in its combat loop. The game is largely centered around boss fights where the enemies don't stagger as easily, so you have to hit them a lot to leave them open to a combo that deals a lot of damage. Unfortunately, this is where I think the system could use some work. Clive's abilities are definitely cool, and there are some pretty amazing combos you can pull off with this moveset, but eventually it becomes apparent that every non-story specific boss is going to follow the same formula of building up the stagger bar and then hitting them with the hardest hitting combo abilities. The combat is satisfying enough, but especially given the amount of reused enemies in this game, it does begin to wear itself out by the end. Another thing is that, like Dante in Devil May Cry, Clive is very much his own arsenal. Over the course of the story, he gains access to a wide array of moves and styles of play. This eliminates the need for a party, which, depending on who you talk to, can be a good or bad thing. multiple party members allows for more natural relationship development between characters, since I'm in control of everyone, not just one character. Final Fantasy XVI does away with this, which is to its benefit in a lot of ways. The game can focus on just one character and fleshing out Clive's abilities to the fullest. It's not as if no other characters are present either, since Clive's dog Torgal has some moves you can perform to extend combos. However, this does make it hard to form an emotional connection with any other character, since Clive is really the only character we spend a whole ton of time with. This isn't helped by the game's frankly awful pacing. The open world segments are without question a slog, and most of the side quests are so boring that I'd rather be doing anything else. Even the character development we get in these quests falls flat just because of how unfulfilling they feel, and it really does feel like filler in a game that could be much, much tighter and more focused. Fortunately, this game succeeds where it needed to the most. The main bosses are all incredible spectacles, from the insane brawl with Titan to the spectacular duel between Clive and Barnabas. This game manages to reach some incredible highs unseen in most video games. Each boss is built up spectacularly, and while the time spent between major bosses can feel a bit grueling, it always feels rewarding to see the spectacle that awaits you. The Bahamut fight is a perfect example of this. Clive and Joshua's reunion is something the game has been building towards for quite some time at this point, and the way they pull it off by having them reunite during the Bahamut fight is spectacular. The music is on point, Bahamut is properly terrifying in his power, and the way the fight plays out is nothing short of top tier. During this portion of the game, I felt it was a 10 out of 10. And that really is Final Fantasy XVI in a nutshell. The game has some pretty low lows, but some of the highest highs in any video game ever. I recommend it to Final Fantasy fans and even action game fans. But I would say be prepared for a bit of a slog in between some fantastic moments.
Salvation. We'll save ourselves, and we'll do it on our own terms. Come to me, Ifrit!
Who are we? What are the dominants? We are but mighty acts of God.
Enough of this! I use my talents to my advantage, and you would tell me there is shame in that?
We shared a dream! I would be the king of the world! The darkness has taken hold of you. It has made you forget yourself.
I don't want to be a monster, Clive.
I have to stop him! I have to save them!
I made a promise to my friends, and it is they who will give me the strength to end your reign.
Your efforts will avail us naught.
We fight, we survive, we endure. We don't need a reason. Five!
Clive!
Five!